In this week's Parashat Shemini, we learn about the deaths of Nadav and Abihu, that they brought this strange fire into the Mishkan. Now they learned this from Psukim, from verses in the Torah that says that the Kohen is supposed to bring the fire, provide the fire for the Mishkan. However, it was the 8th day of the inauguration, the Mishkan was already up, and there was a heavenly fire already in the Mishkan, right, coming from Shamayim, and they didn't need to bring that fire. That's why the Torah calls it a strange fire. They did not act, they did not consult with Moshe Rabbeinu, they did not consult with Aharon HaKohen. They did not even consult with together. This was a separate action by each one of them, that they wanted to come closer to Hashem, and they did what they did without even consulting each other. And in reality, Nadav and Abihu's death penalty was preceded by Matan Torah, where they and the elders were summoned to come up the mountain and to perceive the Shekhinah. And over there, they said that they ate and drank and perceived the Shekhinah, meaning that they gazed at the Shekhinah too much. They didn't show enough reverence and fear, right, to the Shekhinah and the proper respect. So because of that, they were already obligated, they were already chayav mitah, they were supposed to have the death sentence. But Hashem didn't want to kill them then by Matan Torah, because the Jewish people were in such a high state of prophecy, they were in such a high level. Hashem didn't want to ruin that for the Jewish people. So Hashem waited until they do another mistake, in which they did in this week's parasha, which was not consulting with the authorities, which the Midrash says also they weren't married yet, because they felt that they came from such an illustrious background, right? They're the sons of Aharon HaKohen, nephews of Moshe Rabbeinu. So they were waiting actually for the brothers Elazar and Itamar to have children, to marry them. So that was a mistake. The Midrash says they drank some wine to enhance their service when they came in to bring that fire, which that was a mistake. The Midrash says that they weren't wearing the me'il, the tunic that usually the Kohen Gadol wears, which is a little strange because they were not Kohen Gadolim. So what the Midrash means is that they don't have that reverence, that fear that the tunic is supposed to represent, because the tunic the me'il had this bells on the bottom to kind of remind the Kohen Gadol of where he is in the Mishkan, and to remind him to be in awe and to be in reverence. So Nadav and Abihu did not have that reverence, did not have that fear of the Mishkan. Similarly, they did not, the Midrash says they did not wash from the kior, they didn't sanctify their hands, which also is an analogy of how they did not have enough whereabouts and sanctity when they came and brought this strange fire. But nevertheless, they brought this strange fire, and the fire, and Hashem consumed them through fire, through their nostrils, and their neshamot were burned. Their bodies stayed intact. Now these were great people. Nadav and Abihu were great individuals. Their names even attest to it. Nadav comes from Nedivut, which was nobility, of noble character. Avihu means of, father. He was worthy to be the father of the Jewish people. These two people were the next leaders of Klal Yisrael, but nevertheless, they made a mistake. And what caused them to make this mistake? They did want to come close to Hashem, but what didn't they take into consideration? Says Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch beautifully. He makes a diuk. He says that they took ish machtato. Each one took their own fire pan and they brought the fire. Each one was concerned about himself. Each one was worried about his growth. Each one was worried about his desires and his wants. Ish machtato. Each one his own fire pan. They were self-centered, they were selfish. They cared about their own growth. They didn't want to come close to Hashem. But that coming close involved only themselves. It did not make other people around them better. It did not take other people into consideration. It was a self-centered, selfish act. It was ish machtato. It was each person with his own fire pan, having their own individual desires in mind and not taking other people's um, desires and wants into consideration. They did not take the ramifications of such an action, what it could cause for themselves, for all of Klal Israel, and that was their problem. If they had that in mind, says of General Hirsch, if they had that in mind, that what this action of mine, who is it benefiting? Is it only ourselves? But is it a selfish act? Is it a more of an act that involves other people? Is it benefiting other people? Is it making other people better? Then they would think twice. Then they would consult. Then they wouldn't go through with the action that they did. So it's kind of like reminds us to take a look at our own actions. How much of our actions are self-centered? How much of our actions only take into consideration our desires and wants? And how much of our actions actually makes other people around us better? It makes we help other people with our actions. How much of our actions takes uh, other people into consideration? Because of those actions are the actions that are most dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom.